Welcome, connectingdirectors.com readers. I'm super excited today because we've got two special guests that are here to talk about the first ever Green Funeral Conference. So, ladies first on this show. Barbara, introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are if they don't already.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. I'm Barbara Kemmis. I'm Executive Director of the Cremation Association of North America, better known as CANA.
On to you, Darren.
Hi, I'm Darren Crouch, co-founder, owner, and president of Passages International, probably the largest supplier of green caskets and biodegradable urns to the industry.
Very cool. So Darren, when I think about green funerals, you're the person that comes to mind. I feel like you've been in this game, in this realm, longer than anybody else. And so that kind of leads me to the first question. Barbara, as CANA as a cremation association, how did you and Darren get together to partner on this conference?
Well, I will give full credit to the concept of this conference to Darren and his team. Darren approached us and said, hey, we want to do this conference. We've got content and ideas around that, and we want a great partner who can pull off a great meeting. And I said, fantastic, let's talk more. But really, CANA, we're cremation. Cremation is on the spectrum of funeral practice, but not generally considered to be particularly green. Although, of course, a lot of people choose cremation for environmental reasons. And Darren persuaded me. One thing about CANA, and you know this, Ryan, you've been to our meetings, and your listeners have too, we do small meetings, targeted, progressive topics well. That's what we do. And so that's the genesis of the partnership.
That's fantastic. And so the conference took place in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
Yeah.
Is that right? And that's, Darren, is that where your headquarters is?
Yes, so we're located here.
Okay. All right, Darren. So to you, the content for the conference, what was the driver? What are attendees getting and taking away from the conference?
So I think one of the big things for us is, you know this as well as I do, there's been a huge shift in the industry over the last 20 years. And, my challenge to funeral directors is how do you remain relevant during that change? We have stats that come out that say 50% of consumers want to scatter cremated remains. Well, if you go to a funeral home, what percentage of urns are suitable for scattering? My contention is a very small percentage.
Correct.
And so it's no surprise that funeral directors are giving families cardboard and plastic boxes, leaving money on the table, and risking remaining relevant. And so we wanted to really educate consumers on, the game is not over. There are strategies and there are processes and there are systems and there are products that you can implement that will resonate with consumers. And we feel like there's been a huge disconnect between what the industry is offering consumers and what consumers want. And when I go to trade shows and I listen to speakers at these trade shows, they're talking about how to get consumers to align with the industry's values and systems.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's backwards. It's upside down. The industry needs to be thinking about how do we align ourselves with the demands of the consumers. We adjust our systems, our processes, the products that we sell to what the consumer wants, not the other way around. And so, what we're talking about, and cremation is part of this, and we don't make any, we don't demonize traditional burials. We don't demonize cremation. It's all part and parcel of what a funeral is, and we let the consumer pick. I think when we talk about cremation and why we partner with the Cremation Association is because many consumers perceive cremation to be greener. They think ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And in many ways it is greener. In some ways it's not, but in many ways it is. And so, we want to educate the funeral director on how they can connect with this consumer and remain profitable and give families what they want.
Excellent. I think you made a great point. I mean, I had a conversation a couple months ago with another supplier, and it was around, we're a profession that is creating products for the end consumer, yet we never really talk to the end consumer, and we talk amongst ourselves and, oh, this is what they want, but we don't really know. So, there's been a shift in the profession over the last, I would say heavily the last 12 months just from conversations that I'm having, events like what your two organizations put on, where the consumer is the focus and it's far outside the realm of what we typically would have a conference about. And that to me is exciting because it's just pushing the entire profession forward. So on that note, questions that I get asked in certain circles is, is the green kind of movement really consumer driven, or are we just creating a bunch of hype for it in the profession without a lot of consumer demand? So can you speak to, either one of you speak to the consumer demand on green funerals in general?
Can I take that one, Barb?
Yes, go ahead.
So, when I started doing this around 20 years ago, I was basically saying, consumers are buying green products, whether it's a Prius from Toyota or shopping at Whole Foods. Today, the statistics back up what I've been saying for 20 years. So, NFDA came out with a study and it said 51.6% of consumers would be interested in a greener option. The data doesn't lie. The data is there. We can't ignore it. The same thing with the scattering data. 50% of consumers want to scatter cremated remains, and we're trying to sell product that goes in a cemetery. It goes on someone's mantelpiece. I think the market has definitely changed, and consumers are looking for something different.
Very cool. Okay, so you have the conference. What comes next? What happens now? Are there plans to make this an annual conference, or are there building blocks in between? What are the next steps?
I hope so. I don't want to put Darren on the spot to commit, but the feedback was fantastic. And the evaluation data is still coming in. The event was just 2 weeks ago, but pretty much everybody is saying they'll be back for round two. The initial response was beyond our wildest expectations. We had twice as many people as we thought we would have at this first convention or conference. So that just shows that there's an interest. And we also recorded the conference, and that will be available on demand as well. So we hope we can, fill the need for some people who couldn't be in Albuquerque.
Sure, that's fantastic. So, is the United States the leader in the green burial conversation, or are there other countries that have been having this conversation and embracing it a little bit faster than we have?
I think it really is much more common in the UK.
Okay.
I think the resurgence of it really started in the UK, and it's come over here. I think we're somewhere in terms of green burial grounds or cemeteries. I think we're somewhere in the region of 200 as a country, and it might be 20 or 30, give or take, one way or the other there. But you go to somewhere like the UK, which is a small fraction of the size of this company and this country, and there's 200 green cemeteries there. So I think we're probably 3 to 5 years behind where somewhere like the UK is.
So,
and sort of circling back to your question, I don't think I really answered it properly about do consumers really want this? The answer, I think, is yes. The problem is when they go to a funeral home, most funeral homes are not displaying caskets and urns in the ratio they should be relative to what the demand is. And so I think a lot of families go to a funeral home and they're led down this path of least resistance, which is the way the funeral is being conducted the last 50 years.
mm-hmm.
And because people are not thinking straight, they haven't done their homework, that's what they choose. And I often hear funeral directors tell me, well, no one's asking for this. Well, no one's asking for it because nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
It's like being surprised if Prius didn't become a thing and then finding out the Toyota never bought it out front, it was parked in the back.
Yeah.
You have to actually make an effort. It's not going to sell itself. And so there's no doubt that the demand is there. It's a matter of funeral directors making it an option and making it a profitable one for them, so that they can not see it as a threat, but rather an opportunity.
Okay, so the demand is there. You guys have taken the first step of creating an official green funeral conference that could be annual, it could be partnered with other events. Like, I think this thing has a lot of legs to be able to grow. There's things that we can learn from other countries who are, as you said, Darren, probably 3 to 5 years ahead of us. Does this become more of is there an opportunity to take this more to the consumer route from a conversation and education level, where we have a tendency in the profession to kind of just keep everything in the profession, and we have a lot of conferences where we talk about the consumer and what they want, but never bringing the consumer in. Are there plans, or have there been conversations of how to bring the consumer into the forefront of the conversation so they can be educated to know that these products and services do exist and are available?
I'll take that one. I think the answer is yes. There are kind of concurrently, it doesn't really overlap with most of our meetings. There are death cafes
Mm-hmm.
and death themed festivals that are happening around the country. CANA members, as well as other practitioners, are hosting sessions within those things. I was just talking to a board member who's planning for one in Montreal that involves a casket that's lit from the inside. And so people can get the experience of being in a casket for a period of time, and they line up. I don't think they pay for it, but anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a huge curiosity right now that we see on social media and everywhere about death and end of life planning and doing things right and doing things, you know, showing our values that we showed while we were alive at our death, which I think ties to green funeral practices. So I think the kind of sky's the limit
Mm-hmm.
as far as that. But I would say any practitioner who has an opportunity to host a death cafe, to get in front of consumers, to start those conversations, should seize that opportunity, right? Run with it. It's
Right.
just too important. So yeah, I mean, I would love. I even, I would love the idea of maybe coordinating a green funeral conference with one of these consumer things, just so it makes it easier for
Yep.
practitioners to participate. Maybe we can facilitate it that way.
I think that's amazing. Oh, go
I mean,
ahead,
I
Darren.
think also that, the funeral industry has a unique place because there are not many places that a family is almost required to go. So when a death occurs, 99% of families are going to contract the services of funeral director, right? Yes, there are other things happening, and that may not always be the case, but as it is right now, the funeral director, the progressive funeral director, has the ability to change the products they offer, change the services they provide, change the way they market to consumers in their markets, and take advantage one family at a time by educating them as they come in the door. And really, the irony of this whole situation is the consumers that are purchasing these types of products and services at the moment are purchasing the least expensive products and services. And so there's an opportunity to generate significant revenue here, because the families that are going to buy it aren't buying much at the moment.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think kind of the consensus of this is the consumer education. And look, I mean, we can sit in the profession and think that the consumer is not talking about death, but if you've done any research on the death cafes and looked on social media, there are hundreds of thousands of people engaging monthly in death cafes and death related events. That the sad thing is the majority of the funeral profession is not involved in any of these in the equation whatsoever, where the conversation is being controlled by somebody else. And so the consumer wants it. We kind of think internally that it's taboo, but the conversations are happening. And so I applaud both of you for getting your organizations together, and Darren, you kind of being on the front leading edge of this for the last 20 years in the United States market. So kudos for doing this event. I'm excited to see where it goes, where the conversation goes from here, and how it becomes an annual thing, because I saw pictures in the press release that you put out. The event looks like it was held in a very cool space. The displays that were in the background, are not the traditional type displays that most of the funeral homes in attendance probably have in their showroom. So very cool. Thank you for doing what you're both doing in your respective roles to move the conversation forward and continue to move the profession forward. And thank you for agreeing to come on and talk about it with me today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. All right. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.